Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS Showdown. I cannot even keep a straight face with my glasses like this. Welcome to another episode of SaaS Showdown. My name is Rose Layton, and this is my partner in crime,
Colin McCarthy. Hello, Rose again. It's good to be back. Another week.
Yes.
Another SaaS Showdown.
Another week, another fiasco. All of the things always are happening. Today, we are going to spend some time talking about incidents that happen to your SaaS vendors. And this is closely related, I think, to the data breaches stuff that we were touching on. And that's why I want to start with our favorite news darling of the year, I guess, which is LastPass.
Yep, very recently put out an updated statement about what had gone on probably a couple of weeks ago now. Still probably very relevant. But yeah, what how to manage that, what to do, what to consider. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Plus, well, they also they put out some updated statements on what happened, but they also had an employee's computer compromised that had their corporate vault on it.
Yes.
So now their corporate vault is exposed too. So LastPass is just really raking in the breaches this year. And basically, if you're using LastPass, I would recommend at this point that you stop.
Yeah, it is. I was very surprised by the openness in their statement and revealing that an employee's device had been compromised. It does bring a whole range of questions and further discussions about device management, security, containerization, everything else that you can do to protect devices that are connecting and accessing your corporate data. But specifically today, we want to talk, and we are talking about how to manage these instances. So not the incident in themselves, yeah.
Right. But how do we respond to them?
Yes. How do we, as SaaS ops professionals, communicate with our clients, work with our employees, and what do we consider when we make decisions, as you said, about renewing these applications or renegotiating, requesting credit? If you look in your terms of service with a lot of these vendors, you can request credit. Many years ago, yes. I got a couple of days extension on a software license due to an outage. It was only a couple of days, but a couple of days is better than nothing.
Well, and there are some companies that will give you those credits without you asking. Slack is a notable example of that. Most of the time, though, yes, you do have to request the credit. It is kind of, it's one of those things. They want to make sure it's important to you or something. If you recall, Colin, during our spiciest episode last season, we talked a little bit about Atlassian.
Yes.
And during that, I mentioned we would come back to this issue, which is sort of what led us to talk on this topic today, which is that, was it last year or was it the end of 2019? The end of 2020? No, it was last year. So last year, Atlassian had an issue with their cloud product in which one of their employees deleted customer data, a small percentage of customer data, according to them. However, restoring that data proved to be like a monumental task on their part. And they, I believe the affected customers were without their data for sometimes upwards of 2 weeks.
Wow. That's something to consider with cloud. Your SaaS application is in the cloud, but that cloud is actually a computer somewhere, and something can go wrong. And
all clouds are computers.
and there is somebody at that company managing it, and periodically these things do go wrong. It's where AWS and Azure and Google have done software upgrades that have gone wrong, and the whole system has cascaded and crashed, or crashed and cascaded, whichever way around you want to do it.
Right. Or in a notable example, Google had an incident in which Google Docs was not available for 4 hours. And that was caused by a single code push that basically, yeah, it just like it rendered the access to their like key service. It didn't work,
Right.
and so like you couldn't, even though you were like logged in, you couldn't access docs. Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was really weird. The thing about it is, I think there are sort of like, there are issues that are communicated well.
Mm-hmm.
There are issues that are communicated not well. Sometimes customers or companies don't respond very well when they are the ones making the mistake. And sometimes they do great, like because they have systems to handle this sort of thing. This is one of the things that I think people should pay attention to with their vendors. It's not always something that you can observe beforehand. Do you think, Colin? Like you can't really observe how they respond to issues prior to purchasing unless they're a really big company and they've had issues in the public eye before.
Yeah, historically, I know I've had a couple of conversations with companies about, where is your platform, hosted as what you offer us? Where do you host your own tools to manage the platform that you host to us? And where do you host your, support ticketing system if we as a customer have a problem? Because there was a big outage a number of years ago. I think it was a DNS problem. I think it might have been a Cloudflare outage or an AWS outage in an entire region. And it took a lot of SaaS applications down, but it also took the support function down of all of those SaaS companies. So they couldn't even communicate with their customers to say our SaaS application is down. And we couldn't open any tickets with them because their platform was down. And this has happened with very small companies. And I think it even happened to Google a number of years ago when Salesforce.
And it definitely still happens. Because I think even the larger companies, as they've started to go what's called multi-cloud, which is that they're using AWS and GCP and Azure or whatever, they may have entire services dedicated on one platform. And so you're still vulnerable in that sense if that service is important to you.
Yeah.
So let's say that service is their support channel. Right? If that whole service goes down at some point, I really hope you have another way to communicate with that company.
Yes, yeah. And it's, an outage is really bad and the incident response is going to be very difficult when that company's status page is also down. which I have seen, because of course everybody has, status.company or company/status for their uptime. And I think that did spawn some of the third party, status uptime companies that are around there. So you'll have somebody external providing, that visibility into your status of your application rather than you hosting it yourself. But yeah,
I was going to say, speaking of status pages, I don't find this to be the most reliable indicator of whether or not something's a problem. I have two places that I check. Colin, can you guess what they are?
Twitter. And a Slack channel of some variation. There's a number of them out there.
I was going to say Down Detector, Colin.
Oh, Down Detector. Yes. Yeah, that's very good.
I guess there are three then, yes, because I tend to check a Slack channel first. I don't know why I do this. Really, I don't. But yes, I tend to check our network Slack channel first because if it's down, these guys might have noticed it. And then the next thing I check is Down Detector, and then the last thing I check is Twitter.
And the very last thing, probably half an hour later, would be the company's status page, where it might have.
I don't even check the status page. I just have RSS feeds for all of that.
Right. Here's an interesting question. Do you always, or do you even, open a support request with the company if their system is down? And do you just realize, somebody else will have reported it, everybody's affected, there's no point me opening a ticket? Because I never used to.
I think there are multiple camps on this. Yeah.
But now, I
think there are, you do now?
Yes.
What made you start doing it?
Because to make sure that I would get an update would also mean that our name, our company's name, domain name would be on the list of companies impacted and may have an opportunity to be, if service need to be restored sooner, we would be one of the people on the list because we have
and you work at
raised
a
a
large
ticket.
organization.
Yeah, but even when we were a lot smaller, we'd still do that. And it also would mean that if you did want to claim for credits, you could reference the service ticket number to say, we called, there was a problem, you didn't email until.
I would say if you're going to be like really, I guess, on the ball about requesting credits, opening a ticket is never a bad thing because then you can use that ticket as the like reference for like, yes, we were affected by this issue.
Yeah.
Although I've never requested credits from a company who said, oh, like, can you prove that you were affected? I'm like, it was a global outage.
Right.
Shut up.
Right. The other reason I've started to raise tickets is if I'm one of the first people that's noticing it, then the more people that do raise a support request about issue
that's
X,
true. Timing is important. I will open a ticket if no one else is reporting.
Because then the support desk is all of a sudden going to say to each other, "Hang on a minute, we've got we've got a problem. We've got a problem." Yeah, loads of people are saying XYZ isn't working. So yeah, that's why I do that, and that's very important. So this is let's discussed a little bit about working with the vendors and updating or getting information from them about their outage. What about the incident report response inside your company? Do you always communicate out to users through Slack or email?
It depends. I think my inclination is like if it's something that everyone's going to notice and see and is actually blocking work, then yes, we'll communicate immediately, and it's usually via Slack.
Right.
Unless it's about Slack, and then it's via email.
Yes. Yeah. I think when
actually any Slack outages are communicated via email, it doesn't matter if they're widespread or not, because I want people to not feel alone if they can't get into Slack.
Right. I think many years ago when there was an outage in a smaller office, I just walked around the office saying, Google is down, is down, stop emailing me, stop chatting me. It's down for everybody.
Yeah, and that was, I think, one of the good things about being in the office is like it was just a lot neater and faster. I think there's this moment now where when we realize there's a problem, everybody sort of looks at each other and they're like, all right, who's going to write the message?
Yeah.
So it's always good if you have like a couple of people who are designated to do that on your team, hopefully with good time zone spread.
Here's a thought.
Because not everybody writes a good message on your team.
Right.
We know our strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Are you the message writer on your team, Colin?
Depends. No, not always. No. Obviously, I have the ability to email everybody, so sometimes I'll send something out very quickly.
But do you write it, or does somebody else write it and send it to you?
I'll write it.
You'll write it.
But it'll often be very, very brief initially, and then we'll do a more detailed follow-up depending on what the issue is. Yeah. Here's the question, though. Is there value, and should we have a template of, XYZ is down in case of emergency, break glass, here's a template, change a few words,
it's
date, and then send it out?
Yeah. Okay. So I think in terms of, there's some documentation that's good to have, just to have. And I don't add it to that stuff. I link it.
Right.
So like I know how to find it. And I link it. So like at my last org, we had, an internal link system.
Yep.
So we would just type go/Slack is down.
Right. Okay.
Internal and so system. I could link go/Slack is down.
That works. That works if you're in an office or everybody's on the VPN.
Right. Otherwise I link to like the Google Doc or the KB or whatever it is that we have.
And obviously that would all be part of your...
It lists the alternatives to Slack.
That would all be part of your business continuity plan.
I mean, is it? Is it always part of your business continuity plan?
Should be.
I think
should be. It's part of the.
We had those. I've worked at places where we had those pages before we had a business continuity plan.
That's good.
Because people were thinking ahead.
Yeah. Forward thinking.
And then when the business continuity people came around, we were like, we already got this.
Yeah, it's always better to it's better to have a plan and not need it than need a plan and not have it. Because
you should know what to do when your core productivity stuff is down, for example, and that includes acknowledging some of the risks that you have in your environment. Yes. For example, if Google Docs goes down in many environments, there is not an alternative.
No, if that's your sole way of Google Docs communicating. Offline. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's firing up Notepad.
Right? Yeah. You're using your Notepad until you get there. A lot of organizations who have Slack and Google has chat software that people can use if they have to chat. It also has video conferencing software in case Zoom goes down. So like if you're using Zoom and you're on Google, Microsoft is the same way. It has Teams. So even if your organization isn't using that stuff, if you have a license for it, or if you have a license that includes it, you still have opportunities. And that should all be built into knowledge base articles, right? Where do people go when these things are broken?
Yep. Switch to other platforms. And one interesting part of all of that is access and authentication, single sign-on. When that breaks, what is your incident response for that? If you're using Azure AD and everybody's single,
you should tell me.
Let's say everybody's using Azure AD for your identity, or Okta as your identity, and everybody's using that to authenticate into Google Drive, and that authentication breaks. How do people then get into Google Drive? Do you disconnect the authentication and email out a password so people can sign in?
Doing that.
Yeah, but this is the whole part.
Some of those changes take 24 hours to propagate.
You
don't want to break them for an hour.
I know. This is like how big is the problem? What's are going to be our response to it? And
what's our threshold for everybody's done?
Yeah,
we're done.
Yeah, and is it everybody, or like on some of these authentication mechanisms, you can just remove authentication for a number of people, so they could sign into the application directly, whether it's Google Drive or whatever platform is that's business critical for them at that moment. Mm-hmm. And then if you do have all of your eggs or all of your documents in OneDrive, SharePoint, or Google Drive, and that goes down, do you have a backup of it? Can you get easy access to critical files to restore them, so at least people can work with an offline file? I have one of the few times that a backup program has been worth its weight in ones and zeros was during an outage, and somebody desperately needed a file for some pitch work, and I was able to find that document in the backup, do a restore, and they could carry on working offline rather than in the OneDrive, Google Drive online document. So I think that's an important part of your incident response, but obviously a very unique situation which hopefully people will never have to come across. But if you're looking at crossing all of your I's and dotting all of your T's, that's something to consider.
Yeah, for sure. I think we spent some time talking, like a little bit of time talking in the very early episodes about like what are the benefits of using SaaS over self-hosting, and we kind of hinted on it a couple of times. I think this is one of those areas where we get into kind of like what are the downfalls, like what are the cons of SaaS, right? Like there's one thing to say, like if you're self-hosting, every problem is usually your fault, right? Or it's a problem that you can specifically solve. When you're using SaaS and practicing SaaS ops, you have to accept that you are not capable of solving the problem. Usually not capable, right? There's sometimes workarounds that you can get through. So, before the show, Colin, we were chatting about my Chromebook problem where like our phone system wasn't working right. There was a flag that we could change and that we could like educate people to change that would fix it. But the alternative, and that was only because like, yeah, the alternative was a pretty lengthy engagement with Google in which we were waiting for them to incorporate a fix into the current version of Chrome. And in those situations, right, we chose to use the workaround. There are situations where there is no workaround, right? Like if Google Docs is out of commission, like you can't just force your way into Google Docs.
Yeah, yeah. Or Teams doesn't connect, or Zoom is down.
Right.
Any
Yeah.
of them.
Or
yeah.
like, yeah. There, and we also like when Cloudflare goes down, there's a lot of stuff that's broken.
Yes.
And it seemed like if there was like 3 back-to-back incidents like that. I think early last year, and like I just remember thinking like everything on the internet is DNS.
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. I know. A funny story. We were. A colleague was working with a small hosting company to host a website for them, and was saying, "Oh, you know, we'll put it behind Cloudflare." And this hosting company, they were developers. They were like, "Oh, I don't know, what happens if Cloudflare goes down? People won't be able to get to your website." And his response was, well, if Cloudflare goes down, then the world has more problems than people trying to access our small website. Nobody will be able to watch Hulu or get to Instagram or do anything else.
Like Netflix doesn't work quite right. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens. And yeah, so I think there's economies of scale that we're trying to take advantage of in SaaS, but we also have to recognize that things get a little bit out of our control, right? If you're doing things on the internet itself is a volatile place, and Cloudflare is behind everything. When Cloudflare goes down, not only will you not be able to use Discord or watch Netflix or Hulu, you also will have trouble loading a lot of your SaaS applications.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of other content delivery network partners that, you might not know about, but they're delivering a ridiculous large amount of data. If they go down, a lot of things won't work right, or, the shows that you're getting, won't stream correctly.
We definitely see a lot more concurrent outages than we used to, for sure. Where multiple services are going down at one time. Definitely, I think, even more than like 5 years ago. But on the other hand, I think uptime in general has improved, especially with multi-cloud and the consistency of multi-cloud. I remember our phone system had an outage for, I think, over a day one time because of an AWS outage.
Wow.
And we were really hard on them when it happened, and they ended up going multi-cloud afterwards.
That's good. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure we weren't the only customer that were very hard on them.
No. It's interesting you talk about uptime. 20 years ago, excuse me, everybody was talking about the 5 nines.
5 nines is a big deal.
Yeah, but now I never think of the 5 nines. Obviously, the 5 nines is 99.999% uptime, which is like down for, I think, 3 minutes in a year, or something ridiculously small. 7 minutes in a year.
It's very small.
Yeah. Don't think about that.
Now we'll put out with 3 minutes a month.
Yep.
We put up with a lot of stuff now.
Do you? I don't know. There's a difference between outage and slowness. I think a lot of the outages potentially due to
that we have are like actually lag.
Right. Yeah. Due to the distributed, load balancing system, you might not see the complete. That's
a good point. Although, do you think these companies should still be striving for 5 nines? I mean, for example, they're like payment companies often strive for 5 nines. Stripe strives to have 5 nines in their products, and I believe Square does also. And when they don't meet those 5 nines, it seems it's like a big deal. And so, but like, should the Googles, the Slacks, the Zooms, the Ring Centrals, should they strive for 5 nines too?
I would say Yes, but those payment systems are interesting because if they're out for 7 minutes, let's say doing 5 9, somebody's going to correct us in the comments.
Companies are losing money.
Yes, somebody's, because those customers cannot buy whatever they want to buy, whether it's a burger or a blouse or a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
But if you can't get into,
if you've ever gone to a store and they're taking cash only, and you leave, that's the cost.
Well, I think that's called Canada. There was their bookstore up there that recently succumbed to a ransomware account and attack.
The Indigo bookstore is taking cash only for upwards of 2 weeks.
Yeah. That's why I still have paper money. I still like it. It's always worth carrying around paper money, because when your apps don't work for buying stuff, people will take paper money. An Uber driver will take paper money and drive you home when the app isn't working. A taxi driver will. So
that might be illegal.
Always have.
They're not licensed to do that.
All right, let's scrub that then. A regular taxi cab driver will take money to drive you home. You'll be able to get a bottle of water to say, quench your thirst on a hot day. But anyway,
yes.
That's my PSA. Carry around a few dollars
paper
with
money.
you.
Colin says carry around paper money.
Yes. Emergency
disaster
funds.
Preparedness.
Yeah. Incident response. Yeah. When things go down.
Incident response.
When
carry around paper money.
When SaaS applications are down and you cannot go where you want to go or buy what you need to buy. Do you think, lastly, as we close some of our thoughts on this, in your experience, do you think end users have got better in their incident response, the way they manage these? Is it just, par for the course? Like thinking back, if the network was down, obviously it was catastrophic. Now, if the network's down, everybody just hotspots from their phone. Obviously, there are occasions when cell phone carriers will be down, certainly during wide scale power outages.
Or natural disasters, or anything like that.
But do you think the incident response from the end user has got a lot better?
I was going to say, I think related to the 5 nines discussion, I think we as individual end users have gotten better at accepting slowness, outages, things like that, right? Like if Google Docs is down, I have other things I can work on in other places. Or I can catch up on my Slack messages, like you have hundreds of those you haven't read. If Slack is down, well, I guess I'm not slacking. If Zoom is down, well, I guess I'm not going to those meetings. It's fine. So I think as individual end users, we have other things that we can do. So there's not a whole lot, unless you have a very specialized job or you have a deadline coming up. There's usually not a reason that you have to be in a specific app at a specific time. And outages don't often last very long. No. So usually you're just like, okay, I'll just go do something else for a couple of hours. Or sometimes that's a good cue to let me take my lunch, or let me go take a walk.
Yeah.
And come back and it'll be fine.
Yeah. Catch up on team meetings, one-to-one conversations. And it is always good to have, as we said earlier on, a secondary backup. I remember, I think it was about 2013, Google Hangouts, when Google, before Google Meet, you had Google Hangouts, and that was becoming really popular. Google Hangouts had an outage. Nobody could join any video calls. What did everybody do in the office? They picked up these little square things that were on their desk that had a little other piece of plastic on it that had a cable. Apparently they were called telephones, and everybody in the office started to use their telephone, and they would call other people rather than having
an advertisement for corporate phone systems,
a Google Meet.
That is.
And it was brilliant. Those dusty things hadn't been, even in 2013, they hadn't been used for ages. But it was like, oh my god, telephone! This is telephones afternoon.
Yes, I think So I think related to the 5 nines discussion, we have gotten better at just dealing with outages. And, just, continuing on, moving forward despite whatever's happening. But, to go to go back to those 5 nines, I think we should still ask our vendors to hold themselves to that. And like,
Yes.
they should be willing to work on it themselves. I think this is one of the things about SaaS companies that, you know, unless you're really into the market, you may not realize that this is happening. But there are SaaS companies out there with some major infrastructural problems that they're just kind of floating by on, and they need to make some really big changes to modernize or to improve or to fix their load balancing issues or whatever it is. And I think that not holding them to 5 nines gives them permission to not fix those problems.
Right. Yeah. If we as consumers, customers accept outages and slowness, then yes. And it is, always, wise to ask what their incident response plan is. Do they have an incident response plan if tools that they rely on or their service goes down? How do they deal with it?
And I think we as consumers can advocate for ourselves and for each other in that way. Like, first of all, like if a company is not doing right by you and like seems to be really like flouting some of these like sort of customers oriented mindsets, right? Or you can tell like you're getting information that gives you an idea that they have something going on under the hood that like is not great and could be a bigger problem in the future, and they don't seem to be addressing that. You should walk with your money and go find someone else. There's very few systems out there that are like so exclusive and so niche that like you can't possibly use another system. Yeah. I think a lot of people get scared because like, they're like, we must have this one feature. No, you could change your organization and work around that. Like you don't have to have that feature. Yeah. Like even if they're the only company who has that one particular thing. So like, yeah, I think the first thing that we can do is like, if it's not working for you, like walk away, figure it out and walk away. And then I think the other thing we can do is we can be vocal about our experiences.
Yep.
So like if somebody is not doing right by us, like talk about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's a ton of like people out there who just, they're like, like my experience was just us, or like it was just me, or I just had a bad feeling or whatever. Like other people want to know about that.
Yeah. A lot of good communities out there to get involved in and share that information. And as you say, you've got to have the courage and the commitment to leave a SaaS application if it's not working for you, which is probably a whole other discussion for another day. So I think we're confident in our business continuity plans, incident response, from how it can be dealt with from the large scale level, end users and their response. How do we deal with communication? How do we find out about response incidents? And always,
and Colin and I are in agreement. Bring back the 5 nines.
Bring back the 5 nines. Yes, and not be. I'll have to look at latency. That's an interesting one to try and track. Yes, that. I'll have to look at that.
I was going to say timeouts are technically outages, so I would count those.
Yeah,
you should include latency timeouts.
Yes, yeah. How do you track them though? That's the monitor them. Certainly wide scale. I don't know. It sounds
Ask
complicated.
For a response. If you don't get one, you don't. There's an issue.
Yeah. I'm sure it's on the roadmap, like everything is.
Right. That was a good place to leave it.
Yes, it was.
I'm sure it's on the roadmap, like everything is.
It's roadmap season. There's a lot of companies touting their roadmaps for.
I was going to say, I literally just signed up for the Slack roadmap webinar today.
There we go. I knew it was happening in other places. I've had a couple so far. All right. It's been great chatting with you again, Rose.
Yes, as always.
Stay safe. Don't click on any suspicious links and enable MFA.
Yeah. And if I have an outage, I'll just take a walk.
Produced by the Tab Geeks Network. Enjoy all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/tabgeeks. Join our exclusive, free, no sponsors allowed Slack community and sign up for our newsletter at tabgeeks.com.